help with the chores? What the hell are you talking about? Quit messing around. You're living this life because of me. All you need to do is make me dinner and be quiet. My husband, Mark, who had just poured beer on my head, yelled this at me after I asked him to help around the house. I froze in surprise, but quickly regained my composure. There's no reason for me to stay with this man anymore. I wonder what he'd think if he knew what I know. With that thought, I told Mark, no can do. I won't be making meals for you anymore. The next day, I packed my belongings and left the house. My name is Sarah, and I'm 30 years old. I live with my husband, Mark. We met through a friend's introduction and got married. Our marriage had been smooth, and we were living a peaceful life without any particular issues. However, there was one thing that bothered me. It was about how we managed our finances as a couple. I always thought that once you're married, the husband should entrust his entire salary to the wife, and they should operate on an allowance system. But that wasn't the case for us. We managed our finances separately. The reason was that before we got married, Mark said, I don't want an allowance system. I'll contribute to living expenses. Although I had some reservations, some of my friends operated the same way in their marriages, so I thought we'd give it a try. So we split the rent and living expenses, and whatever was left, we each used for our own purposes. Both of us had lived alone before and were currently working. Mark works for a big corporation, and although I don't work for a big company, I have a decent paying job, so I didn't see any issues. I enjoyed spending money on my hobbies, but recently, I started worrying that we wouldn't be able to save much money if we continued like this. Sure, having fun together is essential in a marriage, but so is financial stability. Lately, I've been wanting to save more to alleviate future uncertainties, especially for unforeseen expenses and fulfilling future dreams. I thought it's crucial to start saving. Just when I was contemplating discussing this with Mark, a turning point occurred. Mark suggested, hey, I'll be working from home starting tomorrow. Let's live on your salary and put mine into savings. Your income should be enough if we're frugal. Sounds like a good plan, right? I was surprised but agreed, since I was also thinking of discussing the topic of saving money. But I did ask, so you're suddenly working from home starting tomorrow? He explained, well, my company is promoting remote work. They're starting with trusted employees. If it goes well, they'll roll it out to more staff. I'm so jealous of you working from home, I said, genuinely impressed. Mark laughed. Don't get me wrong. I'm not planning on slacking off. When you think about it, my work hours will actually increase because I won't be commuting. Then we got to the main topic of saving money. I started, well, if I'm going to manage the money, I'll need your bank book and PIN. Mark replied, now that I have extra time from not commuting, I'll handle our finances. But didn't you say you'd be busier because your commuting time will go to work? I asked, genuinely confused. Well, yay, but still, I'll have more physical energy without the commute. I'm good with money management. Just leave it to me, he said. I thought managing finances seemed like a big job, so I accepted Mark's proposal. From then on, whenever we needed money for groceries or social events, I would notify Mark. He would usually provide the necessary funds, but started scrutinizing the receipts, saying things like, did we really need to buy this? We don't have kids yet, so let's cut back on food expenses. And you already have lots of clothes, right? No need to buy similar stuff. I felt a bit confined compared to how I used to spend money freely, but I also felt secure knowing he was managing it. However, as acceptable as his financial management was, his selfishness started escalating to intolerable levels. Ever since Mark started working from home, he'd become even more neglectful about housework. He was never one to help much with chores, but now he was doing even less. I have a full-time job, and I usually don't get home until after 7 p.m. When I get home, the first thing Mark asks is, what's for dinner today? I say, look, I'm working from home, so could you maybe cook the rice or do some meal prep for me from now on? Mark gets angry. What are you talking about? I told you I'm still working hard even if it's from home, right? I see guys getting criticized online for saying stuff like the housewife should be perfect at everything. You know, what you're saying is no different. I'm taken aback by his son's anger. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying he should do everything just because I'm working from home. I only asked because Mark himself had said he has more physical energy now. I'm too tired from work to argue anymore, so I don't say anything else. Yet, Mark continues to complain. Speaking of which, you've been serving up microwavable pasta and ready-made food lately. Stop that. I'm looking forward to meals since I'm at home all day. No more delivery or frozen meals. I'm providing the grocery money from my own earnings. After all, step up as a wife. I want to argue back on many points, but it's true that Mark earns more. I've been holding back because my job at a big corporation is tough, even if it's remote work. But trying to balance work, housework, and all of Mark's whims is wearing me out every day. How much longer will this go on? Continuing this marriage might be difficult at this rate. Just when I start considering this, I come across a certain fact. I discover it as a result of my own efforts to solve my long-standing questions and improve my situation. After learning this fact, I decide to stop putting up with it. One evening at dinner, I make a new proposal to Mark. Look, Mark, I think our current lifestyle is really messed up. Whether I'm working from home or not, we both work and should share the household chores. Or at least, be okay with some frozen food. Or suggest we eat out sometimes. Some understanding is needed here. The way we're living now makes me feel like a slave. It's not a healthy marital relationship. Suddenly, Mark splashes beer over my head. I'm shocked and freeze for a moment. With a furious look, Mark yells, "What are you talking about? Cut the crap. You should be thankful you have this life because of me. Just make the food." I snap back to reality quickly, and I say to Mark, "I can't do it anymore. I won't cook for you again." Mark looks puzzled. "How? What do you mean?" I reply sharply, "It means I'm leaving. I can't go on with you anymore." At this, Mark's face changes. "What? Are you serious? You can't survive without my income. Stop acting tough. Apologize now and I'll forgive you." Ignoring Mark for the rest of the night, I go to sleep. He also says, "You'll probably cool down by morning. I'll forgive you if you apologize then," and goes to sleep. Early next morning, while Mark is still asleep, I pack my bags and leave the house. I knew where it was hidden, so I didn't forget to take my bank book. I go back to my parents' home and take it easy. Around noon, I get a frantic call from Mark. "Hello." Upon answering, Mark starts yelling with tremendous force. "Hey, where are you? How could you just pack up and leave?" I move the phone away from my ear because he's so loud. I have no intention of coming back. I state it clearly. Mark still insists, "Apologize now and I'll forgive everything." I calmly respond, "Forgive what? I don't need to be forgiven by a jobless Mark." Upon hearing this, Mark falls silent on the other end. I continue, "By the way, calling me at noon. Were you sleeping in because you're unemployed? I mean, you've been sleeping in until noon every day after I leave for work. So I guess you're still sleepy, huh? What? Why?" Mark struggles to get the words out. I decided to lay it out for Mark. "You know, I always thought it was a bit strange. Going from office work to suddenly working from home starting tomorrow. It was way too abrupt. Plus, you're always so lazy, never doing household chores. And you usually dump all the tedious paperwork on me. But now you want to be in charge of our finances. I mean, I believed you at first." I sighed. I continued speaking, and then I noticed something was off about you. Usually, you come home and rant about your boss every few days, but then you stopped complaining entirely. At first, I thought maybe working from home reduced your stress levels, But it became weird when you completely stopped talking about work. Mark tried to argue back, but that's just your intuition or something, I said, exasperated. You think I don't know anything? Okay, tell me, what department are you in? What's your job title? And what projects are you working on? Mark was at a loss for words. Can't say anything, can you? Because I know you were actually fired from your job, and that you had an affair with your boss's wife. I told Mark as much. I had suspicions, so I checked with the company. If I ask the coworker about Mark and says he's supposed to be working from home, right? I figured it's okay to fudge the truth a bit, but the answer I got was as expected. When I mentioned Mark's name and asked if they could connect me, they said, he is no longer with our company. Of course, the person on the phone wouldn't tell me the reason for his termination. So, I went to Mark's office, caught some colleagues and bosses I'd met before, and asked them what happened. Everyone looked shocked to see me, and some tried to avoid me. However, when I insisted on knowing, one of Mark's colleagues told me everything. I also visited Mark's boss, who was also the husband of the woman Mark was having an affair with. At first, the boss looked confused, but after I explained, he invited me in and told me the whole story. He should have received official notice, the boss said, and it clicked for me. So that's why Mark had said he was working from home to keep such documents away from me. He must have hidden all paperwork related to this event. I heard from his colleague that Mark had texted him. I told Sarah I'm working from home and managing the money. She fell for it. Life as a need is awesome. The reason he wanted to manage the money was to conceal the fact that he had no income. I got the evidence from his boss and colleagues. At this point, Mark couldn't argue anymore. Finally, he apologized. I'm sorry. I deceived you. I won't cheat again, and I'll look for a new job. I'll do all the housework until I find one. Please forgive me. I replied, there's no way I can forgive you. Not just for the affair, but also for lying. Plus, you treated me like a servant, even after losing your job. Let's talk through our lawyers. I hung up. After that, Mark called me several times, but I ignored him. He even tried calling my parents' landline, but my dad, who knew the situation, shouted, "Don't call here ever again." Eventually, we got divorced through a lawyer. I was able to claim alimony for Mark's infidelity, as well as 3 months' worth of living expenses, since he'd been lying to me and not actually working. Mark faced alimony claims not only from me but also from his affair partner's husband, who happens to be his boss. Now that we're divorced, naturally, he's the one who has to make those alimony payments. It seems he's been hitting the job center pretty much daily and managed to find some work, but he could only get into a small company with pretty low pay. Apparently, he's being worked hard by a younger boss, and his pride is shattered. He had to move out of the apartment we lived in because he couldn't afford it with his new salary. Now, he's living in a run-down apartment, barely making ends meet and paying alimony. I know all this because he's contacted me several times saying, I want to get back together. I firmly rejected him and blocked all his contacts. I don't know what happened to Mark after that. As for me, I've moved into a new apartment and started living alone. I'm living a life at my own pace, with plenty of time for myself. This experience taught me to be skeptical when a husband, who isn't usually responsible, suddenly wants to manage the household finances.